The courtroom fell into a hushed silence as Judge Wallace Bridger adjusted his glasses, a smirk tugging at his lips while he peered down at the 94-year-old legend standing before him. Clint Eastwood, who had faced countless foes on screen, was now up against something entirely different, a judge who saw nothing more than an aging actor trying to play lawyer. "Mr. Eastwood," the judge's voice oozed with condescension. "You do realize that legal proceedings aren't like your Hollywood scripts, don't you? There are rules, procedures." He paused, letting out a quiet chuckle. It's not as easy as delivering a monologue and riding off into the sunset. Laughter rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled frantically, already envisioning their headlines. One even whispered, "This is gold." The opposition's lawyer barely contained his grin. Everyone was anticipating what they thought would be a humiliating defeat. But they didn't truly know Clint Eastwood. The legendary actor stood firm, unwavering. His blue eyes, which had once stared down villains on screen, now locked onto the judge with a look he hadn't expected, absolute certainty. What happened next would leave the entire courtroom stunned, because Clint Eastwood was about to prove that age isn't just a number, it's a weapon when wielded correctly. Before we dive into how Clint turned the tables on this arrogant judge, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Now, let's get into one of the most incredible courtroom moments you've never heard about. Judge Bridger leaned forward, his tone laced with mock concern. "Tell me, Mr. Eastwood, where exactly did you study law?" More laughter echoed throughout the room. Someone in the back muttered, "Poor old man's lost it." But Clint? He didn't flinch, didn't even blink. At 94, he had lived long enough to understand something most in that room hadn't. Sometimes, the quietest person holds all the power. The judge tapped his gavel thoughtfully. "Most men your age are enjoying retirement, watching reruns of their old movies," he mused. "Yet here you are, thinking you can take on a complex legal case by yourself." He shook his head, almost pitying. "Are you sure you wouldn't rather have a real attorney handle this?" The opposition's lawyer, Gerald Parker, leaned back in his chair, his smirk growing. He could practically taste victory. After all, how could an aging actor stand against his years of legal expertise? But then, something in Clint's eyes made the judge hesitate. There was no anger, no embarrassment, just that same steady gaze that had made him a legend. The courtroom held its breath as Clint slowly reached for his briefcase. What he pulled out next would wipe the smirks off their faces, because while they had been busy laughing at his age, Clint Eastwood had been preparing something that would change everything. "Your Honor." Clint's voice was calm, measured, carrying the weight of decades of experience. "Before you continue questioning my abilities." He paused, and for the first time, a hint of a smile crossed his lips. "There's something you should see." As he opened the folder, the room collectively leaned forward. Not just any folder, but 6 months of meticulous preparation. This was about to silence every doubter in that courtroom. "Your Honor," Clint continued, his tone unwavering, "I'm here because a wealthy developer thought he could take what wasn't his. They built luxury condos on my land in Carmel, assuming an old man wouldn't notice. Or maybe..." He paused, locking eyes with the judge. "They thought an old man wouldn't fight back." The developer, Gerald Matson, shifted uncomfortably. His attorney, Parker, whispered something urgently, but Clint wasn't finished. "They sent me letters," he said, pulling out document after document, each more damning than the last, offering to buy the land after they'd already built on it. When I refused, they buried me in paperwork, hoping I'd get confused, hoping I'd just give up. A murmur swept through the courtroom. The judge's smirk wavered, replaced by something else. Curiosity. "You see, Your Honor." Clint's voice hardened, commanding the room. "They made 3 mistakes. First, they underestimated me because of my age. Second, they built on land that wasn't theirs. But their biggest mistake..." He held up one final document for all to see. "They didn't know what I've been doing for the past 6 months." Parker jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, whatever Mr. Eastwood is about to present." The judge raised his hand, silencing him. His focus was locked onto the document in Clint's grasp. "What exactly have you been doing, Mr. Eastwood?" Clint's response would make headlines across the nation. Because what no one had thought to ask was how this 94-year-old legend had spent the last 6 months. "For the past 6 months," Clint said, his voice cutting through the tense courtroom, "I've studied every property law in California that applies to this case. Every precedent, every ruling, every detail." He laid out a meticulously organized binder, tabs color-coded by subject. "I've read 50 years worth of zoning codes. I've studied every boundary dispute in Monterey County since 1990. And I've reviewed every permit application Matson Development has ever filed." The judge's expression shifted, amusement turning into disbelief as he flipped through the documents. Every page was highlighted, annotated, cross-referenced with a level of precision that put even seasoned attorneys to shame. Clint continued, pulling out an aerial photograph. "This," he said, placing it in front of the judge, "is my property line from 1992. Then he laid another beside it. "And this one shows how Matson's development slowly encroached onto my land, month by month." The courtroom was silent. The judge took off his glasses, rubbing his eyes. "Mr. Parker," he said, his voice now serious, "do you have any response?" Parker stood, then sat back down, defeated. Because the evidence was undeniable, and the judge, who had once mocked Clint Eastwood, was now looking at Matson Development with scrutiny that could unravel their entire operation. In light of the evidence, Judge Bridger announced, his tone now firm, "This court finds in favor of Mr. Eastwood. Furthermore, I am ordering a full investigation into Matson Development's past property dealings." A wave of murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Justice had been served, not through legal trickery, but by a man who refused to back down. In the days that followed, the fallout was massive. Other elderly homeowners, inspired by Clint's victory, came forward with similar stories. Within weeks, Matson Development's empire collapsed. Their stock plummeted, their shady practices exposed. And back in Carmel, standing at the edge of his land, Clint Eastwood was asked if he felt vindicated. "You know what I feel," he replied, scanning the horizon. "I feel like I just showed every senior citizen out there something important." He turned to the reporter, his blue eyes sharp. "Your age isn't a weakness. Your experience, your wisdom, your patience, those are strengths. And sometimes, the biggest mistake someone can make is underestimating an old man with nothing left to prove."